So hello and welcome to the ZEDEDA Partner Spotlight. Today we're talking about ZEDEDA and Avassa and how we can help accelerate value by running container workloads at the edge. With me today is Carl Moberg, CTO and founder of Avassa. Welcome, Carl.
Thank you, Maxi. Good to be here.
So let's jump into it and let's start with an introduction to our representative edge team.
Absolutely. So Maxi, the way we talk about the users of the combined system here is that we have two characters, if you like, two personas. One we call Applifer developers. She is into applications. She loves to plan, design, and code them. She is passionate about the application layer. And what's really cool about her is that she drives the value stream for the enterprise she works for. And one of her colleagues is Patrick McEngine. He's an edge IT and platform engineer. He is really passionate about designing, configuring, planning, and building infrastructure. And he's an enabler for the application team. So he loves supporting Applifer in whatever endeavor she's going after. In this case, of course, we're going to talk about Applifer applications running on the edge. So if you skip to the next slide, what we see in many organizations, of course, particularly the ones that have maybe over-rotated towards, let's call it unautomated infrastructure, where the Patricks have been a little too passionate only about the infrastructure and maybe haven't really kept Applifer in mind. They build this beautiful infrastructure, but they spend a whole lot of time managing the infrastructure itself. And it's not unusual for the actual handover of all the application that Applifer and colleagues are doing in a manual fashion. And that may just work in the beginning here. But if you hit the next slide, as the amount of applications are growing and as the pace of innovation in the Applifer teams are growing, meaning the number of versions of applications, even the next slide, is growing, this manual handover to Patrick while he's busy managing the infrastructure layer becomes a bottleneck. And of course, we're computer scientists, at least aspirationally, most of us, and we know what we need. We need better abstractions. And if we look to history, we know that abstractions described by the mother of them, Barbara Liskov in her seminal paper, Programming with Abstract Data Types, can be described as a mechanism which permits the expression of relevant details and, of course, the suppression of irrelevant details. And in our world, and in this setup, we look at the next slide, the way we'd like to think about this in kind of a golden path way is that we want, of course, Patrick to focus on the installation, monitoring, and securing of the infrastructure itself, while Applifer and the Applifers should be able to focus on deploying and observing applications by defining them, that's the what, and defining under which circumstances, the where, and that should be fully in her hands. And of course, that's what we've been building together with you guys. So maybe this is a good opportunity to hand over a little bit to you, Maxi.
Thanks, Carl, and good setup. I think it's a good representation of a lot of the customer scenarios we're seeing. So we've been partnering, quick background on ZEDEDA. We focus on edge orchestration and management. So what I mean by that is you could think about servers or gateways running outside the data center. We provide the foundation and infrastructure that allows you to run applications and container workloads like Avassa on top. We've been around about 5 years, have great investors, and a team that's really been focused on building on the edge for a long period of time. What we've developed is a platform that we talk about sort of in 3 zeros. So zero touch, zero trust, and zero limits. And I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on those today, but fundamental to our system is this concept of zero touch, which means you don't need to send IT folks to the edge. And that's a really important factor when you think about edge because it's a super expensive factor. And when we started working with Carl and team at Avassa, it was super clear they had a very similar design goal. And as we'll show you as we sort of go along in the presentation here, it aligns really well as we think about a secure infrastructure from ZEDEDA and a really flexible with the right abstraction container management from Avassa. So let's talk a minute about ZEDEDA and establishing trust. Because what happens is when you pull a server out of the data center or out of your cloud and into the wild, you have to account for different security threats. It's a physical device. People will steal it. People will plug USBs into it, try and install malware. So it's ZEDEDA. We've built a system that really controls that and locks down the system. And it can be purchased at the factory. We support 80 plus different models. So you can buy that from your favorite vendor, ship it into the wild, and then we perform a really secure workflow every 6 hours. So when the device first boots, and then every 6 hours after, we measure every piece of software running on that device. And we make sure that the hash of that software is identical to what you expect in the cloud. If it's not, something's happened. You either have malware or a human misconfigured something, but we don't boot the device. We keep it secure. The second piece we do is we use the hardware in the device, something called a TPM or a trusted platform module. It's a piece of silicon designed to store keys. We use that as part of our attestation workflow to make sure that the device is actually your device and that it's running the exact software that you expect. And when both of those conditions are true, we unlock the device and allow you to do all sorts of different applications on top of that device. So one customer journey I wanted to highlight, pretty common example. This is actually a retail customer we've been working together on, but we've seen this pattern in other organizations. And this follows a pretty common curve used in the industry around peak of inflated expectations and the trough of delusionment and slope of enlightenment. So I'm sure you've seen this curve before. But if you start on the left-hand bottom corner, this customer had a bunch of legacy, they're running point of sale systems, they're running all sorts of things in their stores. At the same time, they had a number of their developer teams building sort of next generation experiences, things like computer vision, AI shopping. They had sort of a long pipeline of container-based solutions that their development teams were coming to them and saying, hey, we want to deploy this in the store. We want to start with maybe a few stores, see how it goes, and build it out over time. But as a company, they hadn't fully embraced Kubernetes. So they've been working in containers, they've been working in cloud, but they weren't a pure Kubernetes shop. So they did some homework. They worked with the ZEDEDA team and decided, hey, we want to do edge Kubernetes. Eureka, our peak of inflated expectations has been hit. So they reached out to the ZEDEDA team. We spun up a K3S cluster for them. We registered it with their container management employees solution provider. It took about 30-40 minutes. They were up and running in Kubernetes. And as we checked back with the customer over the next few weeks, it was clear they were struggling a bit. They were fully technical around containers. They understand their environment. But as they started digging into the cluster API and admission controllers, all sorts of different components within Kubernetes, it was overwhelming to them. They didn't want to learn a new platform. They wanted to deploy containers. So we suggested, and they decided to move on from Kubernetes into Avassa. And what they found, and what we've been working with them since, is it's really worked well for them. It's taken a lot of the complexity that Kubernetes was bringing out of the picture, but still allowing them to deploy the containers, manage the containers, do what they need to do for not only their developers, but their platform teams. And they're well on this path of plateau to productivity, as it's been named in the industry. So this is a pretty typical journey. We do find customers that are well-depth in Kubernetes and stay in Kubernetes. But for the bulk of users out there who aren't super deep or haven't standardized on a particular Kubernetes, Avassa is an awesome option. And it's really worked well for this customer. So sort of kind of how do we come together, right? So this is a platform view. It represents both of us. So you see ZEDEDA and Avassa in this view. ZEDEDA being that secure edge orchestration piece, we start at the bottom with the hardware and the Eve infrastructure. We allow you to run some legacy next to it. So if you do have Windows machines or you have virtual machines, or maybe you want to run a virtualized firewall at the edge alongside your containers, you can do that within the ZEDEDA platform. And then we've done a bunch of work with the Avassa team to really automate their platform. So you can, with a couple clicks, deploy their Edge Enforcer, which is part of their solution. It'll self-register up into the control tower and allow you to basically start doing development right away. So we've done a bunch of integration between these products, and we think we bring a really secure infrastructure and a really great container management story together for Edge developers. Carl, anything you want to add to this?
No, what I can put on, of course, we love standing on the shoulders of giants, right? Particularly security giants. So being able to leverage on the awesome solutions that you have built in these lower, tougher layers, and then extend that into the realm of Applifers. And like you said, maybe teasing apart the separation of concern, making life easier for Applifer and hopefully less complex also for Platric by removing perhaps some excessive complexities has really, really worked well with our joint users, our joint customers.
Awesome.
And of course, the way we like to think about this, again, here's our friends again, is that, of course, again, Patrick or the IT and platform team will always be in charge of the health of the application layer here. So sitting on top of the secure ZEDEDA infrastructure, but making sure that all the nodes are ready and able to take containerized applications. So providing that kind of monitoring and observability in a way that actually fits their current operation stack, so they don't have to swivel chair or worst case have separate teams for it. And then again, allowing those teams to really delight the applifers, the application teams, by giving them unprecedented influence or even self-service portal style features for them to hook up whatever automation orchestration they have, which is mostly in the container world, naturally around the CI/CD pipeline that they already have in place for their, I guess, cloud footprint, and be able to extend that into the secure infrastructure a container layer, of course, managed by ZEDEDA and Avassa together, becomes a really powerful combination.
Cool. Excellent. Good stuff. Good stuff. So we encourage you to get started. Check it out. If you want to learn more, we've written up a solution brief that kind of goes into the details of how it works together and some use cases. We'd happy to show you a demo. We'd love to show you how it works. Or if you're a hands-on type of person, you can sign up with the ZEDEDA account, get your own edge device, and deploy Avassa in a few clicks. And you can try it for yourself. So we encourage you to get started today. Carl, great job. Appreciate it. Good session today, and we'll talk soon.
Maxie, thanks for having me. A pleasure, as always.